Part 21. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Bulletin Leng. Chapter 201. The Xiwixian tower was already filled with guests. Everyone gathered together in small groups, chatting excitedly, exchanging cups, and it was very lively. As soon as Wang Xing entered the door, he attracted everyone's attention, and some monks exclaimed and said hello to him. After all, his status is noble. If you can please him, you may be able to leave an impression in front of the emperor. Wang Xing nodded reservedly and then strutted towards the second floor. Seeing this, the beautiful woman on the side quickly followed him and asked a brothel woman to arrange a private room for Wang Xing. "Hey, isn't this Wang Shangshu? You are here." As soon as I got to the second floor, I met a handsome young man walking over. Oh! It turns out to be Mr. Zhao. When Wang Xing saw the visitor, he immediately recognized him and smiled lightly. The visitor's surname was Zhao, and his given name was Zhao Wu. He was a direct descendant of the Zhao family. His father was a censor and was considered an important official in the court. However, the relationship between the Zhao family and him was not very good. The imperial censor always thought that Wang Xing got his position today by flattering him. So he often ridiculed him. "Wang Shangshu, you have been very proud of yourself recently," Zhao Wupi said with a smile. Nowhere, just a casual meal." Wang Xing said calmly, not caring. "Hey, you can't say that." Zhao Wu came up with a smile and lowered his voice. "I have heard that after the imperial preceptor abdicates, the position of imperial preceptor will not belong to you, the king." As soon as these words came out, Wang Xing's expression suddenly changed. "Young Master Zhao, you don't want to talk nonsense. The imperial master is in good health. When will he abdicate?" If this sentence is heard by some people with ulterior motives, it will definitely not do him any good. Zhao Wu laughed loudly when he heard this. "Master Wang, don't worry, I just said it casually." After saying that, he turned and left. Wang Xing looked at the other party's figure, his eyes gradually became cold. Little bastard, I haven't made much progress in my cultivation, but I have learned a lot about this frame-up skill. Although the Zhao family is good, it is still far behind him. Therefore Wang Xing is not afraid at all. As for Zhao Wu's frame-up, Wang Xing didn't bother to pay attention at all. In any case, he controls the two major centers of the Ministry of Rights and the Ministry of Household Affairs, and the person standing behind him is His Majesty the Emperor. How can a mere Zhao family create waves? Wang Xing glanced at Zhao Wu's back coldly, then flicked his sleeves and led people to the private room on the second floor. The private rooms in Xiwixian building are all individually designed and have very good sound insulation effect, which can be said to be the ultimate in privacy. The private room Wang Xing chose had a better location and a wider view. He could see the entire banquet hall clearly and even overlook the street view. As soon as Wang Xing took his seat, a servant brought tea and cakes. At the same time, other guests also took their seats in the lobby on the first floor. The layout of this Xiwixian pavilion is elegant and unique, and the decoration is luxurious. The tables, chairs, and benches are all carved from jade, exuding a soft luster. The food and wine are also extremely rare, and it is worthy of being the most famous gold-selling cave in the capital. But everyone's thoughts were obviously not on the food and wine. Even the woman in Xiwixian pavilion beside them had no time to appreciate it. They all stared eagerly at the high platform in the center of the hall. I saw a guhan placed on the high platform. The strings are glowing with brilliance, and the body of the instrument is bright and crystal clear. It seems to be made of white jade, and it is worth a lot at first glance. But at this time, the high platform was empty, and the legendary fairy was not seen. When will the fairy show up? I'm so impatient. Yes, we have been waiting for so long, why doesn't the fairy come out yet? The fairy is not deliberately playing tricks on us, is she? She actually makes everyone sit here and stare. Probably not. A fairy is so beautiful, she shouldn't bother to do this. Everyone was talking and looking anxious, and some people couldn't help but crane their necks and look around. They came to this event mainly for the fairies, but now they have not seen the fairies on the stage, which makes them confused. Everyone, please be patient. The fairy is preparing a song and will be out soon. At this moment, the beautiful woman walked out gracefully and explained to everyone with a smile. Her voice is soft and beautiful, like an oriole singing in the green, making people's ears feel numb. Hearing what she said, everyone's expressions immediately relaxed and they began to wait patiently. Since it is a piece played by a fairy, it must be extraordinary. We are lucky enough to listen to it. Yeah, I hope you won't live up to our expectations. It would be even better if you have a chance to see the fairy's appearance, he he he. Everyone was talking and the atmosphere became more and more lively. He didn't notice at all that there was a young man sitting in a corner of the hall. He was wearing a dark black robe, with a handsome face, sword-shaped eyebrows, and starry eyes. He exuded a majestic aura, as if he were a god looking down on all things, aloof. But the strange thing is that no one around him noticed him, and even some people passing by didn't seem to notice his presence. He drank wine quietly, with a playful curve at the corner of his mouth. It seems that this fairy is very attractive. The person behind this is indeed a talent, and he is well versed in marketing. The young man stared at the strings on the high platform with deep eyes, shook his head and chuckled. He talked to himself, his tone melodious and tactful, ethereal, as if coming from beyond the sky. At some point, a beautiful figure quietly appeared beside him. She was wearing a white dress, her skin was whiter than snow, her body was as white as ice, and her beautiful eyes were flickering with mist, which was intoxicating. Her appearance was extremely beautiful and charming, enough to make the world lose its color and make the sun and the moon dim. She stood there quietly, like a dream, not eating fireworks. Didn't you say that you would do that tonight? Why did you come to the brothel? Her voice was crisp and pleasant, her body trembled slightly, and her red lips slightly opened. The young man picked up the wine pot, poured her a glass of wine, and said with a smile, "Take you to learn some knowledge, so that you won't know anything later." The woman in white dress was stunned when he heard this. "What knowledge can I learn here?" The young man put the wine cup in her hand and smiled gently. "There is a lot of knowledge to learn here. Do you see those women? They are all your teachers." The woman in white dress blinked her eyes, as if she was a little confused. After a moment, her pretty face suddenly flushed. She finally understood something and lowered her head. I know." The woman in white dress was naturally Zhang Luoshan, and the man was undoubtedly Qin Mu. Zhang Luoshan had already washed up in her palace, and even changed into what she thought was cool clothes. She lay on the bed nervously, waiting for Qin Mu to come and visit her. As a result, Qin Mu actually brought her to this brothel. Although Zhang Luoshan didn't know what Qin Mu wanted to do, she still followed him to this Ziwixian pavilion obediently. I didn't expect. She was actually asked to learn some knowledge. Zhang Luoshan suddenly thought of something, and her pretty face turned red with shame, almost bleeding. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 202. Zhang Luoshan took a few deep breaths and tried to stay calm. But despite her best efforts, she still couldn't suppress her inner panic. Because under her white dress, she was wearing an unusually cool outfit. And the crystal necklace was also worn by her, emitting a hazy and attractive glow. Zhang Luoshan's cheeks were flushed, and her pearly teeth gently rubbed her pink lower lip. She tried to suppress the shyness and panic in her heart, lowered her head and dared not raise it. In this look, no matter how much she disguised herself, Qin Mu still saw through her thoughts at a glance. Why, are you shy? Qin Mu joked. Zhang Luoshan shook her head slightly and lowered her head. I dare not. Is the picture starting to appear in your mind? Qin Mu teased. Zhang Luoshan bit her red lips lightly and said softly, I didn't think of anything. The more she denied, the more she confirmed Qin Mu's words. Qin Mu smiled slightly, slowly approached her, and said, no need to hide, in this world, no one understands you better than me. Master. Zhang Luoshan was embarrassed and annoyed, and glanced at him angrily. The two were too close. Zhang Luoshan could even smell the faint smell on Qin Mu's body, which made her heart tremble slightly. The distance between the two gradually narrowed, and their noses touched each other, exuding fragrant breaths intertwined and lingering. Qin Mu lowered his head slightly, sniffed the fragrant body fragrance, and looked at Zhang Luoshan's face, and couldn't help but sigh. The world is full of beautiful people, and the colors of the world are like dust. That so-called fairy is definitely not as good as you. Hearing Qin Mu praising herself, Zhang Luoshan's pretty face became hotter, and there was a hint of shyness in her lowered eyes, and her delicate body trembled. She raised her head carefully and glanced at Qin Mu secretly, but saw that his eyes were burning and full of aggression. In an instant, Zhang Luoshan felt her heart pounding, almost jumping out of her chest. She quickly gathered her thoughts, avoided Qin Mu's fiery gaze, coughed lightly, and changed the subject. Master, what is the name of the fairy? I'm very curious about her. She wanted to distract her attention. Qin Mu smiled and said, don't worry, we'll know soon. Just then, someone suddenly shouted. Look! The fairy is coming. In an instant, everyone looked up at the door. A graceful woman in white came slowly, elegant and agile, like a banished fairy. She was wearing a moon-white flowing gauze dress with delicate gold embroidery on the hem. As she walked, the light was colorful, and she had the illusion of an illusory dream. On this dress, there were all kinds of gorgeous and dazzling gems inlaid on it, reflecting the colorful rays of light, which was beautiful. Her eyes were as charming as autumn water, and her long eyelashes trembled gently, like a butterfly flapping its wings, beautiful and magnificent. Although her face was covered with a thin layer of white gauze, it still couldn't hide her peerless elegance. Her graceful figure, slender waist and proud peaks. A gust of wind blew, and her white skirt swayed lightly, which further set off her slender figure. Her steps were neither fast nor slow, but every step made her figure ethereal. Her smile, every move, seemed to have great magic, stirring everyone's heartstrings, making people feel excited and unable to look away. She walked into the room and immediately became the focus of the whole scene. Everyone stared at her and couldn't look away. The eyes of many monks present were all stagnant for a moment, and then they were filled with amazement. Especially those young masters, they wanted to stick their eyes on her. Especially when her eyes swept over, those people's eyes instantly became dull and obsessed, and fell into obsession. So beautiful. Oh my God, she is 100 times more beautiful than the fairy in the painting. Such a beauty, even if you only look at it from a distance, it makes people feel relaxed and happy, and you can't wait to lose your soul. If I can go to Xuanhuan with her, this life is worth it. So beautiful. It's worthy of being a fairy, it's really different. Many people stared at her blankly, saying foolishly, and couldn't move their eyes away at all. Fairy, fairy. Oh my God. So beautiful. This is the real fairy. The whole brothel was completely boiling, and all the men stared at the girl in white with their eyes wide open. Some people even couldn't suppress their inner excitement and surrounded her frantically. The eyes of those brothel girls also became hot, looking at the girl, with a strong jealousy in their hearts. Everyone, please respect yourself. Under the white veil, a cold and pleasant voice came, as beautiful as a silver bell, but with an unquestionable firmness, as if the celestial being above looked down on all living beings, disdaining any involvement with ordinary people. Hearing this voice, everyone suddenly sobered up a little, and stepped back involuntarily, not daring to get closer. This is the legendary fairy. Even Xuanhuan couldn't help muttering to himself, looking at the girl in white, with a flash of surprise in his eyes. Qin Mu also fixed his eyes, revealing a touch of surprise. I take back what I said just now. Compared with you, she is indeed more advantageous in some aspects. Xuanhuan. Master, you didn't say that just now. You were clearly praising me just now. Xuanhuan pouted her lips, feeling a little aggrieved. However, the fairy was indeed very beautiful, but she gave people a feeling of being out of touch with the world, just like the goddess of the ninth heaven, who could only be admired from afar. And most importantly, hers was bigger. Xuanhuan looked down at herself. Although she couldn't see her feet, she was still a little worse than that fairy. She sighed in her heart, feeling a little disappointed. At this time, as Sumeir stepped into Ziwixian pavilion, the whole space seemed to become much brighter. She came to the center of the hall, stopped, looked around, and then smiled lightly. I am Susu, your slave, and I am sorry to show you my ugliness. Her voice was soft and charming, numb to the bone, and fascinating, and instantly attracted countless men present to breathe faster and look at them hotly. It was completely different from the cold voice just now, as if it was not the same person. Ah, I'm dead. So beautiful. How can there be such a beautiful woman in the world? Everyone's heartbeat suddenly intensified, and their heads were rumbling, as if a ball of fire was burning. Qin Mu's eyes flickered, and his eyes gradually deepened, and he said thoughtfully. Okay, let's play with Inch Z, right? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 203. Qin Mu narrowed his eyes and looked at the woman who called herself Susu with interest. With his current strength as a saint, he could not fully see through the other party's cultivation. He could only see that the other party had just performed an extremely advanced charm technique, which caused such an effect. Although I don't know the specific strength, it should not exceed the 5th level of the saint realm. Qin Mu's mind turned. However, even if the cultivation level has not reached the 5th level of the saint realm, this high-level charm technique alone is terrifying enough. Qin Mu speculated that even a strong man in the saint realm might not be able to resist her charm technique that is close to the Tao and is completely natural. This woman's skills must be extremely profound, otherwise it would be impossible to do it. Thinking of this, Qin Mu's eyes flickered slightly. There should not be too many people who know such a powerful charm technique. He became more and more certain in his heart that the origin of this woman must be extraordinary. At this time, the audience in the audience became more and more excited, their faces flushed, and even the whites of their eyes were streaked with red. Gulp. Someone swallowed saliva, swallowed hard, eyes red, staring at Sumeir. Some people even couldn't control their emotions and shouted, "Fairy, you are so beautiful, can you drink with me?" As soon as these words came out, the scene was quiet, and then thunderous applause and cheers broke out, shouting, "Drink with me, drink with me. Fairy, marry me. I am willing to devote all my love to you, marry you as my Taoist partner, and be together forever. Fairy, I am willing to go through fire and water for you, and die for you." In an instant, the whole brothel was in chaos, and everyone was about to go crazy. Even Zhao Wu and Wang Xing and others in the VIP room on the 2nd floor couldn't sit still, their eyes were burning. It's worthy of being a fairy. It really lives up to its reputation. Zhao Wu swallowed hard, his voice hoarse, his face flushed, and his legs weak. He had never seen such a beautiful woman before. He felt a flash in front of his eyes, as if his soul had flown into the sky. Wang Xing's eyes were also filled with possessiveness, but he did not lose his composure like Zhao Wu. Instead, he seemed much calmer. His fingers stroked the corner of the table, and he murmured softly, "If I give this fairy beauty to your majesty, you will definitely get more appreciation from your majesty. By then, I want to see who in the entire Qin court dares to go against me, Wang Xing." With this thought, the desire in Wang Xing's eyes subsided a lot, and more of it was the desire for power. He knew that everything he had gained today came from your majesty. Only by serving your majesty well could he go further and more steadily in Qin. As for the foreign enemies that Qin was facing now, Wang Xing was not too worried because he had a very strong confidence in your majesty. He knew that your majesty was definitely not the kind of reckless person, and Wang Xing was very sure of this. People can say that I, Wang Xing, am a treacherous and mediocre minister, but no one can question my loyalty to His Majesty and the Qin dynasty. Wang Xing's eyes flashed with cold light, and the aura around him gradually became gloomy. In the court of the Qin dynasty, except for the national teacher Du Yulin, he might be the most loyal to the Qin dynasty. Wang Xing raised his head proudly and continued to look at the high platform on the first floor. At this time, the eyes of the entire Ziwixian pavilion were focused on Sumeir. She stood in the center of the high platform in the hall, with a graceful figure and a long skirt. In a trance, it seemed as if the 9-day fairy had descended to the world, emitting a dazzling and brilliant light. In front of this fairy Susu, it seemed that everything in the world was eclipsed. She stood there, the center of the world, with thousands of stars gathered around her, shining brightly. Sumeir, in a flowing white skirt, gently raised her hand and signaled silence to the surroundings. All the noisy sounds suddenly stopped, and everyone held their breath and looked at her with burning eyes. Het. She smiled slightly, and her eyebrows blossomed with amazing charm, which made everyone's heart beat. Under the gaze of everyone, Sumeir opened her red lips and slowly said, "Everyone, please be quiet for a moment." Her voice was pleasant, sweet, and soft, as if it had magic, which made people quiet down. "Today, I have prepared a song for you, and I hope you will like it." Hearing this, everyone became excited again. "Fairy Susu, let's start. Quick, quick, quick. We can't wait. Miss Susu, play quickly, let us see it." "Haha, the fairy plays the piano, we are lucky to listen today, it will be clear. Haha, the music played by the fairy will not disappoint this young master." In the first floor, everyone was talking about it, blushing and excited, urging. Sumeir pursed her lips and smiled, then bowed. In this case, Susu will show her ugly side. She reached out and picked up the pipa. Zheng. The melodious and crisp sound of the pipa resounded throughout Ziwixian pavilion, shocking everyone's heart. Sumeir's white hands, slender fingers like scallions, slid across the strings, and strands of pleasant music slowly spread out. Every movement of hers was extremely elegant, and every word seemed to contain some kind of Tao rhyme. The pipa was plucked to produce a series of melodious and graceful sounds, like the chirping of hundreds of birds in the valley, and like the gurgling of spring water, crisp and pleasant. Along with the sound of the piano, everyone seemed to feel the fresh breath, refreshing and intoxicating. Then, the sound of the piano stopped abruptly and paused for a few seconds. Just as everyone was slightly stunned and puzzled. Then, a vague, illusory, ethereal song sounded. "In the dim moonlight, I drink alone and get drunk with lovesickness." The song was faint, with a touch of melancholy and a touch of recollection, but more of it was the longing and remembrance for the old friend. After the words fell, everyone was stunned, and a beautiful fairy who missed the distant old friend appeared in their minds. She was dressed in a white dress, drinking sad wine alone under the moonlight, waking up from a dream in the middle of the night, and crying alone. So she played the piano and sang softly under the night, telling the pain of lovesickness. How sad, how sorrowful, how lonely. This song is like a dream, as if it came from the top of the sky, and it makes people feel like they are in the clouds. Everyone can't help but blur their eyes, as if they have fallen into a dream. A pot of muddy wine and half a cup of cold, empty, and sad. After the song. I don't know when, everyone's eyes are wet, and they all shed tears at the same time. The voice is hollow and ethereal, like a dream. But it's strangely drilled into their minds, making their thinking dull, and the whole person fell into a sluggish state, obsessed with it. For a long time, until everyone regained consciousness, they suddenly remembered that this was in reality. Everyone was ashamed, and they wanted to find a gap to get in. They are all well-known figures, but they cried because of a song. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mi and Buletin Leng. Chapter 204. Good. Beautiful, so beautiful. After a long time, someone finally came back to his senses and praised. Others also woke up as if from a dream, staring at Sumetir with fiery and fanatical eyes, and uttered sharp exclamations, echoing. Yes, it's so beautiful. I seem to have entered another world. You sang so well. It's just like the music of the ninth heaven, which makes me feel melancholy. Yes, I just seem to see my relatives, it's so touching. Fairy is really a fairy. If I am lucky enough to marry you in this life, I am willing even if I lose 100 years of my life. The men's eyes were fiery, their fists were clenched, and they couldn't help but roared. At this moment, they couldn't hold anything in their eyes. Only the fairy Susu in front of them. In their hearts, fairy Susu is the most perfect existence in the world. She is mysterious, elegant, charming, pure, emotional, and has all the beauty in the world. If they can spend the night with her and be her lover, they will not hesitate to spend all their wealth and live for 100 years. Qin Mu, who was sitting in the corner, looked at the crazy eyes of the crowd and couldn't help but sigh in his heart. It's too crazy. This is no different from the way those little fairies in the previous life chased stars. It's like they want to give you their lives. And this fairy Susu is really not simple. She only appeared for a few minutes, and she showed all her beautiful sides. Let these male monks be crazy and crazy for her. But little do they know that the beauty she showed is just a deliberate display of personality. This is also the same as those stars and internet celebrities in the previous life. All the personality is just a marketing method, a packaging. What you see is what the agency wants you to see. Whoever believes it is a fool. Of course, there are some differences between the two in essence. This fairy Susu relied on the top-level charm technique to complete all these operations, which was countless times more advanced than those celebrities and internet celebrities. The two were not at the same level at all. The lethality of that song and the singing was so great that even Qin Mu felt a trace of homesickness in his heart. He tilted his head slightly and glanced at Zhang Luoshan, and found that the other party had already burst into tears, with a pale face and red eyes. Obviously, she also thought of some sad and unforgettable past events. Looking at her appearance, Qin Mu blinked. If you want to say what Zhang Luoshan is sad, then Qin Mu is definitely the most qualified to speak. Because Zhang Luoshan's sad things were almost all caused by Qin Mu himself. In fact, although Zhang Luoshan looks cold and arrogant, she is very kind and weak in her heart. However, in this world, the price of kindness is too high. Qin Mu concluded shamelessly in his heart. At this time, Fairy Susu, are you really not going to receive guests? I am willing to spend all my wealth just to be the fairy's guest. A young man in green clothes summoned up his courage and shouted boldly, instantly attracting everyone's attention. Others also stared at Sumair with wide eyes. Although they knew that this question was abrupt, they could not hide their inner desire. Humph, a mere mortal, wanting to blaspheme the fairy. Suddenly, a sharp and piercing voice exploded in the lobby, instantly suppressing the noisy atmosphere and shocking everyone in place. I saw Zhao Wu slowly walking down from the second floor with a group of powerful guards, and shouted coldly. The fairy is a godlike figure, how can you people touch her? It's just like a toad wanting to eat swan meat. As soon as these words came out, everyone showed anger. But they didn't dare to show anything. Everyone knows that Zhao Wu is a direct descendant of the Zhao family, with a deep background, strong foundation, and overwhelming power. He often goes in and out of various brothels on weekdays, and has long been arrogant, and few people are willing to provoke him. What? Still not convinced? Zhao Wu smiled proudly and said sarcastically, if you don't believe it, you can try it. As soon as this was said, everyone was silent. He. Seeing this scene, Zhao Wu's smile became even stronger, and his eyes flashed with pride. He looked around and scanned the whole scene with a haughty look. Wherever his eyes went, they avoided his sharp edge and dared not look at him. This condescending attitude and the attitude of pretending in front of the fairy made Zhao Wu more proud. He smiled coldly and continued, I advise you to restrain your dirty thoughts, otherwise, your lives will not be saved. Everyone looked at each other. Although they were indignant, they did not dare to vent. They knew that Zhao Wu was not exaggerating. After all, Zhao Wu was not a good person. He had a violent personality and acted recklessly. He was proficient in everything, including murder and arson. However, those people in the lobby on the first floor did not dare to say anything, but some people in the VIP room on the second floor did not buy it. Mr. Zhao is really domineering. He is worthy of being an important official in the court. He is confident. Sure enough, a lazy voice came from the box on the second floor. Everyone looked up and saw a man standing by the window in a gorgeous brocade robe. He supported his forehead with one hand, leaning against the railing, with a disdainful smile on his lips, as if he had never taken Zhao Wu's threat seriously. It's Mr. Han. After seeing the man's face clearly, everyone's pupils shrank slightly and they exclaimed in surprise. This man's surname is Han, his name is Feng, and his father is Han Duan, the assistant minister of the Ministry of Justice. It is said that this man is quite skillful, does things flawlessly, and is very courageous. Moreover, he is extremely powerful and has reached the realm of Shenzang, which is even higher than Zhao Wu. Therefore, even if Zhao Wu saw him, he would not dare to be too presumptuous. Han Feng, what do you mean by this? Do you think I am not qualified to ask Susuxian to play the piano? Zhao Wu raised his eyebrows, narrowed his eyes into a line, and asked in a cold tone. Hearing this, Han Feng glanced at him lightly and sneered. What do you think you are qualified for? What did you say? Zhao Wu was furious when he heard this, his blood and qi were agitated, and a faint golden light appeared outside his body, obviously he was really angry. He was a direct descendant of the Zhao family. When had he ever been insulted like this? The two people looked at each other angrily, full of anger. At this time, Wang Xing also walked to the railing on the second floor. He stood with his hands behind his back, overlooking the area below, and said calmly. No need to argue. This minister has something to discuss with Fairy Susu alone. You all should leave. What? Who do you think you are? Why do you make the decision for Fairy Susu? Hearing this, Zhao Wu immediately snorted coldly, not appreciating it at all, and shouted loudly. That's right, Lord Wang, if you have anything to say, why not say it on the spot? Why hide it? Besides, this matter concerns the reputation of Fairy Susu, and we will definitely not agree to it. Han Feng also spoke up, with an indifferent look, neither humble nor arrogant. Seeing this scene, Wang Xing's face instantly darkened. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mi and Bulletin Leng. Chapter 205. Zhao Wu, Han Feng, are you questioning the decision of this minister? Wang Xing's voice was full of frost, which made everyone shudder. I dare not, but the reputation of Fairy Susu is important, please consider it carefully. Han Feng shook his head and smiled contemptuously. That's right, Lord Wang can't bully us juniors by relying on his high official position and seniority, right? Zhao Wu also said sarcastically. How dare you? Wang Xing was furious and shouted angrily, since this minister has decided this way, there must be my reasons, just do it. Wang Xing's face flushed and gritted his teeth. As an official appointed by the court, how could he bear being contradicted again and again by these people? But Han Feng and Zhao Wu unexpectedly reached a united front for the true love in their hearts at this time, and looked at Wang Xing without fear. Even more dignitaries and powerful monks began to come out of the second floor. Almost half of the nobles and ministers of Chang'an City gathered here. Each of them was a powerful person. If they stomped their feet, the whole Chang'an City would tremble. They all looked at Wang Xing, although they didn't say a word, the meaning they expressed was very clear. Obviously, they all wanted to meet Fairy Susu. Su Meir looked at these humans who were jealous of her, and her heart was full of contempt and disdain. A group of stupid human races also wanted to spy on her fairy charm. It was just wishful thinking. Today's atmosphere was almost brewing, and it was time to end it. Presumably, her reputation would spread throughout Chang'an City tomorrow. Just as Su Meir was thinking about the time to leave. At this time, Wang Xing snorted coldly and said lightly. Since you have all shown up, then this minister will speak frankly. This minister intends to bring Fairy Susu to the palace to meet the emperor. Do you want to stop me? As soon as this was said, the faces of the noble families present all changed. Although they wanted to invite Fairy Susu to spend a good night together, they would not dare to stop this matter even if they had 10,000 courage. Once they offended the emperor, it would be a big deal to lose their heads or even kill the 9 clans. This. Zhao Wu hesitated. If Fairy Susu entered the palace, he would never see her again. Thinking of this, Zhao Wu clenched his fists and his face turned livid. What? Zhao Wu, do you dare to snatch His Majesty's woman? Are you tired of living in the Zhao family? Wang Xing smiled coldly and mocked. Hearing this, Zhao Wu's body trembled violently and his cheeks turned red. But in the end, he still lowered his proud head. After all, their Zhao family is nothing in front of His Majesty. Zhao Wu glared at Wang Xing fiercely and said humbly. Lord Wang has misunderstood. Since your Majesty wants to bring Fairy Susu to the palace to meet the emperor, I naturally have no objection. That's better. Wang Xing smiled contemptuously, turned his head to look at Han Feng, and said with a smile, Mr. Han, what do you think? Han Feng narrowed his eyes when he heard this, and a trace of unwillingness flashed across his eyes, but it soon disappeared. Then he said lightly. Lord Wang is loyal to His Majesty, and Han admires him. Wang Xing nodded with satisfaction. Then he looked at the others and said loudly. Who else objects now? Just raise it. After the voice fell, everyone was silent and there was silence. Are you kidding? Who dares to object? Could it be that he thinks he has not lived long enough? If His Majesty knew that they had stopped such a beautiful fairy from entering the palace to meet the emperor, I'm afraid that their ancestors would be razed to the ground. Everyone didn't even dare to express a trace of resistance, and could only secretly complain in their hearts that Wang Xing was indeed an old fox, and he could always flatter people very well. No wonder he could sit in the position of Shangshu. Haha, okay, since everyone has no objection, then this Shangshu will take Fairy Susu to leave first. Wang Xing laughed. However, at this time, Sumeir waved her hand, raised her beautiful eyes, glanced at everyone, her eyebrows curved, and smiled like a flower. I appreciate the kindness of all the gentlemen. However, I don't like dealing with strangers, so let's stop here for today's event. I'm leaving. As her voice fell, a breeze blew. In an instant, she turned into a wisp of smoke and disappeared from everyone's sight. Fairy, fairy, please stay. The monks on the first floor were anxious when they saw this. They all knelt down and begged with wailing. However, no matter how hard they tried, Sumeir disappeared silently as if she had never appeared. Fairy, fairy. They knelt on the ground and wailed in pain. But no matter how they shouted, they could not change the fact that Sumeir left. And all this was thanks to Wang Xing and Han Feng and others. In the end, the monks on the first floor stood up in despair, with a sad and angry face, and glared at Han Feng, Zhao Wu, Wang Xing and others with resentment. Wang Xing was stunned in the same place, with a dull face and dumbfounded. He had calculated everything, but he had never expected that Fairy Susu would refuse such an opportunity to enter the palace to meet the emperor. This was completely beyond his expectations. Not only Wang Xing, but also other people present were also shocked. Because such an opportunity is something that any woman would never beg for. Especially for a beauty like Fairy Susu. If she is willing, she will become the most favored concubine of His Majesty. By then, even the royal family members and even the ministers in the court will have to respectfully call her madam when they see her. But this Fairy Susu refused. And she left so decisively. This is simply unbelievable. Not far away. Qin Mu looked at this scene, smiled and shook his head, and a hint of amusement flashed in the depths of his eyes. Then he disappeared with Zhang Luoshan. Ha, Lord Wang, it seems that you made a mistake this time. Hearing the sneer in his ears, Wang Xing suddenly woke up. His face sank, stared at Zhao Wu fiercely, snorted coldly, and left with his sleeves. Everyone closed their eyes and sniffed the air in ecstasy, as if they wanted to absorb all the fragrance in the air that had not yet dissipated into their bodies. Then they looked at the empty high platform again, and suddenly felt bored, and left one after another. But the attitude of Fairy Susu was deeply imprinted in their hearts, making them unforgettable for a long time. Of course, what shocked them the most was that Fairy Susu actually refused the opportunity to enter the palace to meet the emperor. This would definitely be a legendary story if it were spread out. I believe that after today, the reputation of Fairy Susu will spread throughout the entire imperial capital, even the entire Deccan, and even the entire Tianlan domain, becoming the dream goal of countless young heroes. On the other side, Sumeir moved her jade steps lightly, her waist swaying, and she was walking towards her residence. In fact, she was very interested in the opportunity to enter the palace to meet the emperor at the beginning, because her original goal was to enter the palace. But on second thought, the palace was full of dangers, it would be safer to wait for Qin Mu to take the bait in this Ziwixian pavilion. And the less a man gets, the more he desires. I believe her refusal today will definitely attract the attention of Qin Mu, the lord of the great Qin. As long as Qin Mu comes to the Ziwixian pavilion, it is equivalent to walking into the net she has laid. At that time, won't she let him be controlled? Sumeir's lips curled up with a charming arc, and her eyes rippled. Men, are all the same. Her lips curled up slightly, revealing a look of contempt. Soon, Sumeir came to the courtyard where she lived, and she pushed the door in. But the next moment, she stopped abruptly. In the pavilion in the courtyard, a man in a black long gown was sitting on a chair and drinking tea leisurely. Behind him, there was a beautiful girl standing obediently beside him. Sumeir's pretty face changed slightly, and her eyes shrank into needles in an instant. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mi and Buletin Leng. Chapter 206. Looking at the two people in front of her, Sumayer's heart couldn't help but tremble slightly. She was too familiar with the person in front of her. In particular, the man's face has been deeply engraved in her mind, and she will not be able to forget it even if thousands of years pass. Of course, this is not love. But the way the other party killed the saint in the northern territory of Great Qin that day was so shocking that it was engraved in her heart and unforgettable. Moreover, she also wanted to get the enlightenment tree from the other party, so how could she forget the other party's face? This person is surprisingly the king of the Qin dynasty, Qin Mu. Sumayer never expected that just after she refused to enter the palace to meet the saint, Qin Mu would actually find Ziwixian pavilion and even find her. I really think highly of this man. I thought I would only see him tomorrow, but I didn't expect that he can't wait today. Sure enough, he is a womanizer just like the rumors outside. Sumayer's thoughts changed rapidly, and she couldn't help but sneer in her heart, full of contempt for Qin Mu. When she learned that Qin Mu did not come to Ziwixian pavilion today, she thought that her reputation as a fairy would still need to brew for a while. But now it seems that she is overthinking it. But this was good, it would save her a lot of trouble. After all, if Qin Mu didn't come today, she might have to put in more effort. You, who are you? After a brief moment of sluggishness, Sumayer took 2 steps back warily and asked with vigilant eyes. She looked like a shy and timid girl next door, which was pitiful. Don't be afraid, Fairy Su. My name is Mu Yun. I am a wandering cultivator in the world, and I am also a good person. Hearing Sumayer's doubts, Qin Mu picked up the teapot on the table and spoke slowly, his tone as gentle as the spring breeze. As he spoke, he pointed to Zhang Luoshan behind him and continued to explain. Her name is Qing Qing, and she is my personal maid. Well, she is also a good person. Zhang Luoshan. Sumayer. Sumayer was speechless at this time. She didn't expect that the other party actually hid her identity and started pretending to be a pig and eating the tiger. It seems that this is the lecherous emperor's way of picking up girls. First approach with an ordinary identity, and then reveal your identity as an emperor, thereby gaining the woman's heart. Humph, you dare to play with such a broken trick in front of me? The feeling of contempt in Sumayer's heart became even stronger. Although this faint king's strength is unfathomably powerful, his weaknesses are also obvious. That is beauty. But you can't blame him. Since ancient times, few humans have been able to pass this level. Sumayer blinked, her expression gradually calmed down, her pretty face returned to its normal look, and she asked softly. I don't know you, how did you get in? In the pavilion, Qin Mu picked up the teapot, filled himself with a cup of hot tea, and took a sip. I'm sorry, I did disturb you, but I really admire Fairy Su too much, so I had to take this step. The corners of Sumayer's eyes twitched slightly. You don't look like you admire me at all. Instead, you look more like the owner of this courtyard. She secretly cursed in her heart that all emperors were indeed shameless, but she still looked pitiful on the outside. Young master, there is no need to blame yourself. If you really like the slave family will naturally love you and accompany you. Master, please wait a moment while I change my clothes. After saying that, she moved her lotus feet and walked slowly towards the room. Sumayer's movements are extremely elegant, and every move she makes has a seductive rhythm, exuding a rich charm. She has a very good figure, with curves at the front and back, and exquisite bulges. She can be called a devil's curve, which is seductive. Every step she takes seems to be able to arouse people's hearts, making people unable to help but push her down and ravage her fiercely. When passing by Qin Mu, a breeze blew from nowhere, and her clothes were slightly lifted, revealing her snow-white shoulders, as well as a large area of skin as clear as jade, and a looming spring light. Even through the dress, you can feel the soft and smooth touch. But Sumair seemed not to notice, just lowered her head and walked forward. Even Zhang Luoshan, who was standing aside, was shaken by Sumair's seductive movements, and his legs couldn't help but feel weak. Even though Qin Mu had rich experience, his eyes were also attracted at this time. This woman is so seductive. At this time, Sumair seemed to have noticed that Qin Mu's gaze was different from her own. Her delicate body trembled slightly, she lowered her head shyly, and quickly pulled her clothes back. A peerless face with flying red clouds. The somewhat coquettish and shy posture is not offensive at all, but instead adds a bit of charm. She paused, then resumed her steps, twisted her slender waist, and walked towards the house. Sumair's movements seem natural, but in fact every movement is the result of her exquisite control. This series of her actions were so smooth and natural that no one could see any problems. Looking at her graceful figure, Qin Mu's eyes flashed and the corners of his mouth curved with a hint of teasing. On the other side, inside the room, Sumair stood in front of the dressing mirror, raising her eyes slightly and scanning the beautiful figure in the bronze mirror. As expected of me, even if I become a human, I am still the most beautiful one among humans. I am sure that the tyrant will be fascinated to death. Sumair secretly praised in her heart. She reached out and touched her cheek, and a cold murderous intent flashed through the depths of her eyes. But soon, her expression became soft again. Afterwards, Sumair reached out and took off the light blue dress hanging on the side and put it on. Compared to the gorgeous white dress, this light blue dress looks like a pure and kind girl next door. Afterwards, she put her hair behind her ears and fixed it with a pearl hairpin. After doing all this, Sumair began to put on makeup. Although her face is already beautiful enough to overwhelm the country, if she continues to put on a little makeup, it will be the ultimate killer. No man can resist, she said. Sumair raised her hand, and an eyebrow pencil embroidered with pink flowers appeared in her jade hand. This eyebrow pencil is very easy to use, and its name is Xuanhuan. It is a product of the Western elf clan, which can maintain skin condition, heal scars, and even has the effect of keeping youth and prolonging life. Therefore, it is very popular among women in the Western elf clan, and the price is extremely expensive, costing 790,000 spirit stones. Ordinary demons can't afford it without hard work, and they have never even smelled it. However, in her hands, this thing is not too expensive. After all, she has the strength of the 5th level of the Saint Realm, and she can still squander it at will with just an eyebrow pencil. Sumair carefully draws her eyebrows and lips, and the whole person becomes more and more beautiful and unworldly, beautiful beyond description, just like a fairy who has fallen into the mortal world. Just when Sumair was about to draw a peach blossom mole at the end. Fairy Su is really beautiful and makes people unable to look away. Suddenly, Qin Mu's mellow voice came. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 207. Sumair was startled, then quickly put down her eyebrow pencil and turned her head to the side. When did this bastard get in? Why didn't she notice it at all? At this moment, Sumair's heart was filled with uncertainty. She is a 5th level saint. Logically speaking, every plant and tree in this courtyard and even the entire Ziwixian pavilion is under her control. But Qin Mu just didn't know how to appear quietly behind her. It was like he appeared quietly in his own courtyard. Sumair suddenly felt heart palpitations. The opponent's strength is probably more terrifying than she imagined. Or maybe there is some treasure in Qin Mu's body that can cover up his aura. Sumair thought about it and felt that it should be the latter. At Qin Mu's age, it is impossible for him to have such terrifying strength. To kill the saint that day, he only borrowed the power of the formation and the power of the treasure. Sumair is still very confident in her judgment. There is no such young saint in this world. Sumair turned around and looked at Qin Mu, the smile on her face not diminishing. Young master is so complimentary. Qin Mu shook his head, his eyes scanning Sumair unscrupulously. The fairy's outfit is really unique. No wonder Qin is so happy to see the hunter and wants to invite the fairy to enjoy the moonlight together. I wonder what the fairy wants. When she heard Qin Mu's naked teasing, the corner of Sumair's mouth twitched slightly. Who just said that he was a good person? It hasn't even taken a moment to burn incense, but you've already stopped pretending, right? Sumair was angry and contemptuous in her heart. But this can also show from the side that she is indeed so beautiful today that men cannot resist her. Sumair suppressed the surging emotions in her heart and asked softly, since it is the young master's kind invitation, how can the little girl refuse? Qin Mu nodded and walked out first, followed immediately by Sumair. The two walked out of the courtyard one after another, with Zhang Luoshan following closely behind. The three of them walked slowly on the path paved with blue stones. At this time, night falls and the stars hang high in the sky. A full moon hung high in the sky, casting a hazy moonlight that illuminated the surrounding scenery. The green willows in the courtyard are light and green, with many green leaves. From a distance, it looks like an emerald green river winding away. Sir, the slave family still doesn't know where you are from. Sumair asked gently and deftly, with a touch of charm on her beautiful face. Qin Mu looked at her appearance and couldn't help but sigh. You and I met by chance, so why bother talking about our origins? Just remember that we are friends. Sumair was stunned when she heard this. She obviously didn't expect Qin Mu to say that. She was silent for a while and then suddenly smiled. Young master is really a wonderful man. Qin Mu smiled and said nothing, making no comment. Then the three of them sat down in the pavilion, sipping tea and admiring the elegant and quiet surroundings. A pot of tea, a plate of cakes, and a candlestick are quite interesting. Sir, how about I play a piece of music for you? Sumair took a sip of the green and clear tea soup in the teacup, and suddenly asked with a smile. Then I'll bother the fairy. Qin Mu took a sip from the wine glass, implicitly but without losing etiquette. Seeing Qin Mu agree, Sumair smiled sweetly, then she slowly stood up and walked to the edge of the piano platform with graceful steps. She gently stroked the strings, and melodious music suddenly flowed from her fingertips. A strange fluctuation spread instantly. Sumair strummed the strings with her slender hands. Her posture was elegant and graceful, like a fairy under the moon. As the notes jumped up, Sumair's movements gradually accelerated, as if integrated into the movement, and the sound of the piano was intense and high-pitched. The song is over. The corner of Sumair's mouth curled up slightly, and she walked slowly to the pavilion. Yingying knelt down and saluted. The civilian daughter Susu comes to see your majesty. As she spoke, she leaned forward, her breasts were slightly straightened out, their plumpness swayed slightly, and every move she made was charming. A faint light flashed in Qin Mu's eyes. He raised his eyes gently and said quietly, "Get up." "Thank you, your majesty." Sumair stood up, still lowering her head, not daring to look at Qin Mu. Qin Mu put down the wine glass in his hand, raised his eyes to look at Sumair who stood up, and said with a smile, "How did you recognize me?" Sumair said frankly, "Although His Majesty has hidden his identity, His Majesty is tall and handsome," and his words exude a domineering aura of looking down on the common people and dominating others. Except for emperors, ordinary men cannot compete with him. Match. Sumair paused and added, "Moreover, the maid behind His Majesty is one of the best in the world in terms of cultivation and appearance. She can never be a so-called casual cultivator." Sumair lightly opened her red lips and spoke eloquently. She didn't plan to continue pretending, and was ready to open the skylight and speak frankly, and strike first. After listening to Sumair's analysis, Chinmu couldn't help but show approval. You are very smart. A civilian girl is ashamed of herself. Sumair smiled humbly. I heard that Fairy Su is good at the piano, so I couldn't help but come to listen to Fairy Su's superb skills, but I was afraid that it would disturb you, so I hid my identity. Fairy Su shouldn't care, right? Chinmu said, stretched out his hand and said, Fairy Su, please sit down, I'll toast you. Your Majesty, you are joking. This is Susu's honor and even more of a blessing. Sumair replied respectfully, then sat down next to Chinmu and picked up the wine glass. Thank you, Your Majesty, for the wine. The clear wine slid down her throat, and Sumair narrowed her eyes slightly. It is indeed a palace wine, sweet and mellow, intoxicating. She couldn't help but admire. Chinmu smiled slightly when he heard it, picked up the wine glass and took a sip. The two of them drank back and forth, and soon they finished a pot of wine. Sumair put down the wine pot in her hand. Her cheeks were already flushed, with a breathtaking beauty. She seemed a little tipsy, her red lips slightly opened, and she said vaguely, Your Majesty, I am a little tired, why don't I leave first? Well, that's fine. Chinmu nodded, I'll take you back to your room to rest. After that, he got up and helped Sumair leave the pavilion. The two of them competed with each other in acting. If it were in modern times, they would definitely win the Best Actor and Best Actress awards respectively. Zhang Luoshan, who was standing by, watched the two of them leave with mixed feelings in her heart. What does that mean? Tonight was clearly a chance for her and her master to be alone together, so how come a vixen showed up halfway and abducted her master? Zhang Luoshan felt a little relieved, but was soon replaced by a sense of loss. She was the first to come, so how did she become this vixen? The more Zhang Luoshan thought about it, the more she felt wronged. She stomped her feet fiercely, and then ran straight to the direction where Chinmu and Sumair left. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 208. On the other side, Sumair was supported by Chinmu back to her room. As soon as she stepped into the threshold, she fell down softly and leaned into Chinmu's arms. Her cheeks were flushed and she looked intoxicated, like a flower about to bloom. Her original body fragrance mixed with the aroma of wine hit the nostrils and was refreshing. Your Majesty, you can go out, I can do it myself. Sumair's eyes were blurry and she stammered. Heh. Chinmu couldn't help laughing when he heard this. Are you sure? I can do it? Sumair forced herself on, as if she wanted to walk to the bed. But before he took 2 steps, his calves went weak and his whole body threw himself into Chinmu's arms. Then his hands subconsciously wrapped around Chinmu's neck, and his whole body hung on Chinmu's body. Chinmu was startled, then reached out and picked up Sumair. He lowered his head and looked down at Sumair, with a slight curve in the corner of his mouth, and asked in a hoarse voice, What do you want to do? Hearing this, Sumair buried her head on Chinmu's chest and said in a muffled voice, Your Majesty, I don't feel well. Oh? What's wrong with you? Sumair raised her little head, extremely shy, her eyes seemed to be in a trance. She raised her head, looked at Chinmu with her eyes dreamingly, and said in orchid words, I want. Chinmu raised his eyebrows, What are you thinking about? Yes. Sumair bit her pink lips delicately, her voice sounding like a mosquito moan, Think. She spoke intermittently, as if she had something to hide, and looked shy. Chinmu chuckled lightly. He bent down and came closer to Sumair, blowing his warm breath in her ears and saying in a hoarse and sultry voice, Then I will satisfy you. Really, Really? Sumair asked with a trembling voice, obviously very nervous. Of course it's true. After finishing speaking, Qin Mu threw Sumair onto the bed vigorously, and then pressed him down on her. Sumair felt her body suddenly fly into the air, and then her body fell heavily on the soft quilt. She closed her eyes, her eyelashes trembling slightly, showing her inner tension. However, in fact. Ha, you stinky man, is this not okay? See how I deal with you. A hint of sarcasm appeared on the corner of Sumair's mouth. Then, her pink lips opened slightly, and a trace of pink smoke overflowed from her lips and teeth and floated in front of Qin Mu. There was very little smoke, but it was eerie. They penetrated into Qin Mu's body silently. At this moment, Qin Mu's body was stiff, as if he had been cast a restraining spell, unable to move. At this time, he was staring at the person lying underneath him with scarlet eyes. Sumair took this opportunity and immediately stroked his angular profile with her fingers, saying in a seductive voice, "Your Majesty, do you still need me to help you change your clothes?" Sumair's voice was charming and tingling, like a spring breeze caressing her, making people feel hot all over. Qin Mu's eyes became redder and redder, his breathing became more rapid, and he nodded frantically. When Sumair saw this, she felt happy, and the corners of her lips curved into a coquettish smile. It's done. The other party's soul is now in a defenseless state and can be shaped into any shape by her. Next, as long as she uses the nine-tailed Sky Fox clan's enslavement method, she can implant restrictions in Qin Mu's soul. In this way, as long as she uses a little magic, she can control Qin Mu's life and death. When the time comes, Qin Mu will become her loyal slave, loyal to her forever, and even trust her with his life. Thinking of this, Sumair slowly unbuttoned the top button of her collar, and her fair and round shoulders were gradually exposed to Qin Mu. Looking at the beautiful woman in front of him, Qin Mu's eyes became even redder. "Your Majesty, please don't look at me like this." Sumair pretended to be shy. "I will be shy." But although she spoke the gentlest and most charming words, there was a hint of coldness and malice in her eyes. Then, she began to frantically attack the soul in Qin Mu's spiritual sea, trying to control Qin Mu. Behind her, 9 phantoms of snow-white foxtails with a hint of pink appeared, swaying. There was also a fox mark formed by the condensation of pink mist, which rushed towards Qin Mu's face, disappeared into it instantly, and disappeared without a trace. After doing all this, Sumair breathed a sigh of relief and felt at ease. Finally got it done. Sumair slowly closed her eyes. Just waiting for the slavery restriction to be successfully burned into Qin Mu's body, she would be able to take control of Qin Mu's power of life and death and completely control him. But what she didn't know. Just when the restriction of slavery was about to be burned into Qin Mu's body, a faint golden light suddenly came from Qin Mu's body, blocking the mark of slavery. At the same time, suddenly, an overwhelming and overbearing pressure surged towards her. Her delicate body trembled and she suddenly opened her eyes. What caught his eye was a pair of black pupils. Qin Mu's eyes were as dark and deep as an abyss, as if there was an abyss, which made her whole body feel cold. This aura was so terrifying that it actually gave her the urge to kneel down and beg for mercy. You're awake." Sumair looked at the handsome man in front of her in disbelief. He actually regained consciousness. Sumair's eyes widened and her pupils shrank. "How is this possible? Why can't I wake up?" Qin Mu said indifferently, his voice was cold. As soon as the voice fell, puff. Suddenly, she spurted out a mouthful of blood. Sumair covered her chest and widened her eyes in horror. The foxtail shadow behind her suddenly shattered and dissipated in the air, turning into a ball of pink mist. The slavery ban she cast was completely out of control. Sumair's face was pale. She looked at the man in front of her with fear and uneasiness, and said in a trembling voice, This is impossible, absolutely impossible. But she didn't dare to hesitate. Her body shape changed instantly, turning into a wisp of green smoke and preparing to escape. Qin Mu was not in a hurry, and casually stretched out his hand to grab the void. Great Wilderness Prisoner Sky Finger. Bang! The green smoke exploded and disappeared. In an instant, Sumair felt as if her body was imprisoned, and no matter how she struggled, it was useless. Ah! She screamed and fell to the ground, in a mess. Who are you? Sumair looked at Qin Mu with a face full of horror. Before she finished speaking, she saw a slender and powerful right hand stretched out and grabbed her slender neck. Under this force, she was like a delicate mortal, and her whole body fell to the ground. Bang! At the same time, she felt a pain in her waist, and was instantly turned over by an unmatched force. Sumair felt a dizzy, and then she lay on the floor. What are you going to do? Sumair was horrified, and her watery almond eyes widened, looking at Qin Mu who was so close. The two were only 3 inches apart, their breath blended, and they were extremely ambiguous. What do you think? Qin Mu stared at Sumair, his eyes burning, full of possessiveness. Sumair couldn't stand the fiery gaze, and her heart trembled, full of anxiety. I advise you not to do anything rash. Otherwise, Sumair's threatening words stopped abruptly. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mi and Buletin Leng. Chapter 209. Qin Mu leaned over and kissed her lips, blocking out the rest of her words. A hot masculine energy penetrated into Sumair's body and instantly swept through every inch of skin around her. Sumair was stunned. Ah! She was actually forced to kiss. She is the supreme ancestor of the nine-tailed Sky Fox clan, many times more senior than the leader of the nine-tailed Sky Fox clan. How dare this damn human being? She had never been in love for thousands of years, but tonight she lost her first kiss to a human man? Let me go. After reacting, Sumair pushed Qin Mu in shame and anger. Sumair gritted her teeth and pushed with all her strength. However, Qin Mu's power was too strong. She couldn't resist at all. Qin Mu didn't move at all, but Sumair suffered a backlash because she failed to use the restraint of slavery just now. At this time, spiritual energy surged in the body, and his pretty face was pale, with a trace of scarlet blood remaining at the corner of his mouth, which was extremely dazzling. Obviously the situation is very embarrassing. Sumair became more and more frightened, and she realized that she was really wrong. The opponent's strength is too terrifying. Obviously several times stronger than her. How is this done? Sumair was full of confusion. She couldn't understand how the other party had such powerful power at such a young age. This simply overturned her knowledge. But this is obviously not the time to think about these issues. Qin Mu in front of her has already made her next move. If she doesn't stop him, she will lose more than just her first kiss. Asshole, Sumair cursed angrily, you bastard. Stop it. Hearing this, Qin Mu raised his lips, and there was danger in his deep voice. Oh? A stinking gangster? I think you like him too. Do you know who I am? Sumair asked with a sneer. I am the supreme ancestor of the nine-tailed Sky Fox clan. How dare you touch me? Our Fox clan will definitely be at odds with you, Great Qin. In desperation, Sumair could only temporarily take on the identity of the nine-tailed Fox clan in an attempt to make Qin Mu afraid. But it was obvious that her threat was in vain to Qin Mu. It even made Qin Mu feel even more excited. Hearing this, Qin Mu raised his eyebrows slightly and said in a slightly disgusted tone, no wonder I smelled a foxy smell from a distance. It turned out to be a vixen. Xuanhuan. You dash, she was so angry that she almost vomited blood. Smells like fox? This human bastard. She smells so fragrant, but there's no trace of a foxy smell. Are you looking for death? Xuanhuan's defense was completely broken, and she glared at Qin Mu angrily with a pair of almond-shaped eyes, full of ferocity and anger. She has lived for almost 10,000 years, and no one has ever dared to say that she smells like a fox. The corner of Qin Mu's mouth raised a mocking arc. Heh. There was a strong sense of sarcasm in his smile. Immediately, he squeezed with one hand, and a vast and majestic spiritual power surged. The great desolate prisoner's heavenly finger directly sealed Xuanhuan's power. No matter how hard she tried, she still could not break free. This made Xuanhuan completely panic. This guy's strength is beyond imagination. Don't be nervous, I just want to study the body structure of the fox. With a smile on his lips, Qin Mu slowly approached Xuanhuan's delicate body. Looking at Qin Mu's cheek that was getting closer, and those deep black eyes that seemed to be able to penetrate everything, Xuanhuan's heart trembled, and an inexplicable panic emerged in her heart. Subconsciously, I ducked back, but there was nowhere to retreat. She glanced at Qin Mu in front of her, and a look of determination flashed in her peach blossom eyes. At this point, it seemed that she could only use the last resort. Although she would pay a heavy price afterwards, the situation was critical at the moment, and Xuanhuan could no longer care so much. She suddenly smiled charmingly, and her delicate body shook slightly, revealing her seductive white collarbone. The slender snow-white arms wrapped around Qin Mu's neck, and she leaned softly against him. Her voice was soft and enchanting. Your Majesty really can't wait. After saying that, she stretched out her pink tongue and licked her bright red and plump lips, which was extremely tempting. That kind of look, that kind of behavior, coupled with the unique charm technique of the nine-tailed Sky Fox clan, is enough to make any man lose his mind and go crazy. But Qin Mu was not included in this list. It's not because Qin Mu is not a man, it's because he has seen someone hotter than this. You can never imagine how much potential those daughters of criminals will unleash in order to survive. Hey, vixen, don't get fever in front of me. Qin Mu sarcastically raised his hand without hesitation and slapped Xuanhuan hard and loudly. Xuanhuan only felt a buzzing in her head and a buzzing in her ears. She shook her figure twice and did not recover for a while. You. Xuanhuan covered her face and looked at Qin Mu in disbelief. After being stunned for a moment, she suddenly became furious. Asshole! How dare you hit me? Qin Mu stood up lazily, his eyes darkened, and he said casually. You still have a chance now, that is to defeat me on another battlefield, otherwise. The words were not finished, but the meaning was obvious. Hearing this, Xuanhuan was stunned, and then sneered, you are just a human. Although Qin Mu is very powerful, his body is still the frail body of a human being. How could it be compared with the body of her nine-tailed fox clan? It would be easy for her to defeat the opponent. Xuanhuan sneered in her heart, the other party's decision just happened to fit her next plan. Today, she will let the other party understand. What does it mean that there is heaven outside the sky, and there is a fox outside the fox? What? You don't dare, Qin Mu said lightly, with a sharp edge flashing in his dark eyes. Xuanhuan said proudly, why don't I dare? I will play a game with you. The corners of Qin Mu's mouth curved in an evil way, and he raised his hand to hold Xuanhuan's chin, and then bowed his head again. Xuanhuan. This foolish king. The change of mind really makes the fox confused. Ignoring the strange feelings in her heart, she moved her jade fingers slightly and drew a complicated and weird symbol in front of her. Then, she recited the incantation and secretly recited the obscure fox language in her heart. $$ $U0026%, $## asterisk backslash U0026% UN backslash U002634% hashtag. As Sumire finished speaking, a stream of blood flowed from her wrist, dripping down at her feet. Immediately afterwards, the drop of blood suspended strangely and slowly rose into the air. The blood cells became brighter and brighter, finally blooming with a bright golden light. Immediately afterwards, the golden light suddenly converged, condensing into a blurry shadow of a fox. Looking at the illusory fox shadow, Sumire's eyes showed a somewhat painful look. That's her monster spirit. Her last move was to leave her body and use her physical body to fight against Qin Mu. As long as she wins, she can absorb the power of Yu and Yang in Qin Mu's body, and then control the opponent's body with her soul to reverse the situation. This trick is even more effective than slavery. Once completed, the other party will not be able to betray him forever. If you lose. No, she can't lose. A cold light suddenly appeared in Sumire's beautiful eyes, and she gritted her teeth and stared at Qin Mu. She wanted to see what the other party would have to do to fight with her when she sucked all the power of Yu and Yang out of the other party's body. The battle was about to begin, and soon it was in full swing. The wind outside the window was very noisy, and the candlelight inside the house was flickering. I don't know how much time has passed. Sumire's forehead was covered with sweat, her face was as pale as paper, her breathing was heavy, her body was shaky, almost overdrawn, and her pupils were dilated, showing a state of laxity. Once again she found out she was wrong. The other party is not a human at all, but a humanoid Tyrannosaurus. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mi and Buletin Leng. Chapter 210. Zhang Luoxin sat on the steps outside the house. Her legs were together, her hands supported her chin, her head slightly raised, looking at the moon in the sky, her eyes a little confused. She had been sitting here for a long time. The starry sky at night was very bright. She stared blankly, her eyes were dazed, and somehow, the stars in the night sky seemed to be arranged into a handsome and familiar face. This face has existed in the depths of her memory for too long. She didn't want to remember it, didn't want to remember it again, but this face seemed to be rooted in the depths of her soul and could not be shaken off. There was a very strange feeling in her heart. It was like something was quietly changing. Unlike the loneliness in the past, now, she seemed to have a sense of belonging. There was a concern. Zhang Luoxin suddenly came back to her senses, and her face flushed instantly. I must be crazy to think about these things. Zhang Luoxin sighed softly, feeling a little irritated. Especially the sound coming from the house, which made her feel at a loss. She wanted to find a crack in the ground to crawl into. She closed her eyes and tried to practice quietly, so that the random thoughts in her mind would dissipate. But, those sounds seemed to be a demon, circling and lingering. Gradually, Zhang Luoxin's earlobes began to turn red, and spread to her snow-white neck. This feeling made Zhang Luoxin unbearable. She opened her eyes suddenly and looked in the direction of the room. Damn vixen! Zhang Luoxin was very angry and wanted to rush into the house to ask what the burning vixen did to her master. She stood up, walked to the door, stretched out her hand, and prepared to push the door open. But when her hand just touched the door, she paused for a moment, her eyes full of hesitation. She didn't dare. On the one hand, she was afraid of Qin Mu, and on the other hand, there was always a weak voice in her heart, telling her not to fall. Ah! Zhang Luoxin bit her lip and groaned, and could only continue to recite the meditation mantra silently. Unfortunately, the effect was minimal. Scenes appeared in her mind, and Zhang Luoxin's mind was flying, unable to extricate herself. I don't know how long it took. The sun was rising, and the warm light shone on her body, dispelling a hint of coolness. She rubbed her eyebrows and slowly exhaled a breath of turbid air. At this time, the door was pushed open with a creak, and Qin Mu came out dressed neatly. Zhang Luoshan subconsciously tilted her head, and first a ray of light reflected into her eyes. The light was very dazzling, but in that light, a tall figure was reflected in her hazy vision. His black hair fell on his shoulders, his appearance was extremely handsome, his temperament was calm and noble, like a banished immortal. This person is the master? Zhang Luoshan blinked, and ripples appeared in her heart, and she couldn't calm down for a long time. It turned out that he looked so good. Master, seeing Qin Mu coming out, Zhang Luoshan immediately stood up from her seat and called out respectfully. Her voice was a little hoarse, her eyes were slightly red, as if she had cried, and her expression was full of fatigue. Qin Mu nodded, walked to her and stopped. You look very tired. Zhang Luoshan's mouth twitched slightly. After listening all night, how could I not be tired? Qin Mu asked again, you didn't rest last night. Zhang Luoshan thought for a while, and whispered, Luo is worried about the master. Worried about me? Qin Mu raised his eyebrows, you are still worried about me. Zhang Luoshan lowered her eyes, pursed her red lips, and said nothing. Qin Mu turned slightly and glanced at the bluestone steps where Zhang Luoshan had just sat. He raised his eyebrows and asked with a smile. Did it rain last night? Why is the ground wet? Zhang Luoshan's face froze slightly, her heart seemed to skip a beat, and she waved her hands quickly, no, no. Oh? It didn't rain? That's really strange. Qin Mu raised the corner of his mouth, revealing a faint smile, and looked at Zhang Luoshan with a playful look. Zhang Luoshan lowered her head slightly, her pretty face flushed, she didn't dare to look back at Qin Mu's gaze, but just moved her jade feet lightly to block Qin Mu's vision. Maybe, dew condensed from the morning mist, she whispered, her voice as thin as a mosquito's, shy. Qin Mu chuckled and didn't continue to tease Zhang Luoshan. He looked at Zhang Luoshan and said in a low voice, go in and clean up. Zhang Luoshan breathed a sigh of relief and nodded hurriedly, yes. After that, he ran into the house as if running away. Bang. She closed the door, leaned against the door panel and took a breath, her chest heaving violently. Zhang Luoshan touched her hot cheeks, calmed down, and then looked into the room. Then the next moment, she was stunned. Sumeir was lying on the floor, her eyes were scattered, and there was a faint pink heart in her pupils. A pair of snow-white jade legs overlapped, and the skirt slid down to the waist. The two white and straight slender legs looked even more radiant against the pink and smooth skin. It was just that the bruise on the knee seemed a little out of place. Zhang Luoshan. Her expression suddenly became extremely complicated. She couldn't help but stretch out her right foot, kick Sumeir, and whispered, hey. However, Sumeir still rolled her eyes and had no reaction. You deserve it. Fox girl. Zhang Luoshan curled his lips and cursed, then bent down to pick up the limp Sumeir and began to clean up. At the same time, the name of Fairy Susu of Ziwixian Pavilion was also spreading in Chang'an City with a more turbulent momentum. All the cultivators who appeared in Ziwixian Pavilion that night praised her as flawless as the nine heavens mysterious lady. There were countless praises. And her refusal to enter the palace pushed her perfect fairy image to the peak. This made the name of Fairy Susu almost a household name, and countless boys rushed to chase her just to see her fairy face. For a time, Fairy Susu's reputation soared again, and even faintly surpassed Zhang Luoshan in the past. However, what they will never know is that the flawless fairy in their minds has long since turned into the shape of Qin Mu. Warm Ti.